Hey everybody, welcome to Entertain the Thought. You're here with me. I'm Reese Roberts, and I have some things I'd like to share with you about oppression today. So this seems like not so much of a happy topic, but I really appreciate talking about oppression because, of course, it just helps when you're able to understand things just a little bit brighter. It kind of helps you to orient yourself and make better life decisions. So here on Entertain the Thought, the focus is to sort of connect the dots when it comes to things in society, when it comes to the education that we've been given, when it comes to the religion or the religious practices that we've been taught, and a few other things. So, oppression. There are a few different types of oppression, or I should say there are different manifestations of oppression that I think should be highlighted because they have different components to them, in and of themselves. So firstly, oppression of the mind or the spirit, also oppression of the body, and social oppression. I think that there are several people who are socially oppressed who are not actually aware that they're socially oppressed. So let me just say that racism is one of those things where it's a fear-based construct. It's something that was invented in order to make all of us afraid of one another in a very ridiculous way. And so I don't believe that race is something that should be overlooked, or racism rather is something that should be overlooked. But I'm going to grit my teeth and say that I think we should sympathize with our certain parts of our enemy in this social structure. So the reason I'm saying that is because they're also being oppressed as well. In this country, the federal government, or what we know as the federal government, which is in reality a private corporation, we tend to just sort of dismiss the fact that there are only a few who are in control over the the happenings, the powers that be, the things that happen in our legislative branch, the things that happen really in the White House altogether. I'm pretty sure we know that those things are happening regardless of what we say, regardless of our vote, regardless of what lower, middle, and upper class European, or those what we call colonizers, what they may have to say about the situation. So what I believe is that all of us, them included, the Europeans who are calling themselves citizens of a federal corporation, honestly you can't call it a federal corporation but a private corporation, if you call yourself a citizen of the private corporation, the idea is that you're owned by the corporation. And that's actual legal, what they call legalese or legal jargon, that you'd have to research in order to understand, because there's a lot of language that gets sort of taken out of context, and it has incorrect structure the way it's presented to us in our general cultural understanding. So let me stop on my tangent. But like I said, I do think we should sympathize, because we're all being oppressed in one way or another. So first, I'm sure that some of you have followed me on Entertain the Thought on Instagram, which is entertain.the.thought on Instagram. But there's a diagram of what I'm talking about. So if I get off on a tangent a little bit too much, you can refer to the slides on that page. I just posted it today. So firstly, oppression of the body. And yeah, excuse me, because I'm looking at my notes. These are my notes. But oppression of the body. So I'm sure that you know in this country we have a piss poor selection of food, especially in the hood. Now, this is one thing I would like for Caucasian people to understand, is that, you know, society does a very, very good job of painting a picture to certain people of certain things. Now, where I live, there is a Chick-fil-A, there are two McDonald's, one on both sides of the intersection. You make a left, you make a right, there's a McDonald's. There's a Popeye's chicken, there's a JJ's fish and chicken. There's also a Fish Supreme where you can get more fried fish, and the list goes on. There's only one healthy place, which is called Moorish Medicine, where you can get juices and salads and veggie wraps and, you know, vegan options. But go to, say, Alpharetta, where I used to work. I'm in Georgia, and which is about 45 minutes away from my house. On their street, the residential area, there is a BurgerFi where you can get bean burgers and veggie burgers. There are plenty of, you know, Thai places where you can get decent vegetarian options. There's a place called Clean Eats. There's a Willie's. There's a Chipotle. There's a Panera Bread. Of course, there are several Starbucks. There are so many different options because in this area, this is where the more affluent Caucasian people live. Now, you know, when you think about the fact that spiritual ascension or spiritual development is heavily reliant on your physical development, think about what that does in a minority neighborhood or a lower income neighborhood where the food options encourage the people to a less healthy physical state of existence, where people are overweight, people have hypertension, people have diabetes, people have, you know, all kinds of skin problems, all kinds of hair problems, confidence issues going on. You know, the implications are pretty much endless. You know, think about just that type of oppression, what it can do to a person to not have an appropriate body image. You know, those things are greatly distorted for us in our community. Now you think about also physical oppression or oppression of the body. It also comes from being a wage slave. I know that there are different types of slaves. We have debt slaves, we have wage slaves, we have imprisoned slaves. You know, we have people who are just not aware of the fact that they're slaves, but physically, slaves are the people who willingly give time, large amounts of time out of their lives to the will of another person, or to the betterment or the progression of another person besides themselves, all under the protection of said person or entity or whatever. And I'm going to use that word protection very loosely because obviously slaves are not being protected, we're being terrorized. But, you know, we're not going to tangent any further. Violence is another form of physical oppression. Now, I'd also like for I'd like for all of us to understand about the fear attached to our physical oppression by way of violence. All of us need to be worried about this. Of course, melanated people have to worry about it first because we're the ones who are constantly hunted down and constantly, you know, murdered in the streets, blah, blah, blah. But we also have to think about the fact, everybody, that the people who control this society, they're not concerned about what color you are. They don't care. Eventually, if you're in the way, or if you're out of line, if you're not following the rules, if you're not a part of the mission to dominate, then you're an outcast. You're going to be disciplined, and you will also have to face violent force. There's something that is very prevalent about that right now. If you pay attention to the trends of the news, I don't watch news that much, but if you pay attention, period, if you're aware, you can start to see that nowadays everybody has some form of social oppression or social injustice that they're fighting for. Everybody is fighting for something. But eventually, when the private corporation that says it's a federal government decides that you don't fit into its picture of the future, or its picture of whatever mission it's on, then guess what? Violence is what you'll be met with. That's the history of this particular corporation. You know, these people operate in violence, terroristic violence. So we all need to start thinking about how we focus our attention. Are we focusing it on the right thing? Because racism only focuses hate from the oppressed back onto the oppressed, which doesn't make sense. All right? We're fighting against each other when we are actually all in the same boat here. Even though the boat for us goes way deeper, carries way more bodies, yes, we have way more to gripe about, and I say gripe on. You know, never stop the fight. But let's also remember that there is an enemy. There's a common enemy that we're not paying any attention to, and they're consistently making progress against us as a culture, as a nation of people in this particular country, on this landmass. So even though we're making an attempt not to hate each other, but in so many ways we are. We just, I believe, need to refocus our energies on the ones who are actually making these laws and making these progressions towards things like martial law, and the ones building these camps, the ones that are responsible for these inhumane acts, gentrification. You know, there's somebody responsible for all that. So, imprisonment, I think there's no secret about that. Imprisonment is a form of oppression of the body, but we also have to remember there's only one source that's responsible for that type of oppression. So we really need to, you know, focus that attention. Consumerism and capitalism, I post about this a lot on this page deep. Capitalism is one of the biggest forms of oppression because, of course, we're all chasing inside of a system that is focused on enslaving us by stealing our time away from us, stealing our passions, stealing our joys, making us work all the useful hours of our lives away, while we're not even passionate about what we're doing on a daily basis. We're just doing it because we want to earn a check so that we can buy things, so that we can be comfortable with not having any passion, not having any joy, not having any hope or love. You know what I mean? We're just buying things to make it feel better. I mean, I wish I could turn this camera around. I'm not gonna do it. About all the stuff I got in this house, I'm guilty myself. I can't really talk no trash, but the more and more you're building on the vision of another person, you're truly giving away the whole meaning of your own life. The meaning of your life is attached to your time and your work. So, of course, you have things like substance abuse as well, physical oppression, and colorism, color of the law. The color of the law is something that is extremely important. If you look at the slides on that I posted on Entertain the Thought on Instagram, the slides also talks about natural law, and the fact that we have been under a colored law, or what is called colorable law, it strips us of our natural sovereignty or our natural position as the leaders of the land. If you don't recognize the fact that you have a nationality and you call yourself black, or white or yellow or red. I mean, honestly, we have to consider the fact that no Asian calls themselves yellow, even though we call them yellow. That's the most ignorant thing ever. No Indian calls themselves red, even though we call them red. No Mexican calls themselves brown, even though we call them brown. We should not be calling ourselves black just because we're being called black. I understand that it can be a euphemism. I can understand that it could be a term of endearment, just like nigga. But I truly believe that if we wanted to reclaim our power in this country, it has absolutely nothing to do with us rising up in the streets. It has absolutely nothing to do with us, making a fuss or hating anyone even. It has everything to do with us recognizing that on paper, we're giving up our rights. Okay? The government entered into an agreement that naturally protected us and our national status, but those agreements were broken, and here we are. So I also wanted to talk about oppression of the mind, because oppression of the mind, aside from the body, is a whole nother animal. When you think about it, your diet is related to your physical oppression, but it also has to do with your mind as well. We all are familiar with the pineal gland. The fact that it houses hormones and the fact that it interacts with your spirit is something that should be significant to us. But when the gland becomes calcified and we're not able to use it because of our diets, we have to know that that's also intentional. The fact that we have diets that, especially dairy, dairy is being pushed to us intentionally now. We have to understand, just like back in the day when those people in Tuskegee, or was it Tuskegee, or Tennessee, they had somewhere, I think it's Tuskegee, where they were being experimented on, given syphilis, so that they could be, monitored to see the advanced effects of syphilis in the human body. But, that same thing is being done to us on a larger scale, where the people who are making money off of the cattle industry, they are intentionally feeding us or pushing onto us foods that are unhealthy for us in our bodies, especially our pineal glands, because they don't want us to wake up and realize this is something that's killing me. It's something that's cutting me off from my body. It's cutting me off from my spirit. So, again, this is something that I'm guilty of. I have not fully made a dietary transition that I'm satisfied with, but it doesn't change the fact that it's just not fucking fair. You know what I'm saying? It's just not fair. Why do I have to protect myself against the people who claim to be protecting me? That's the whole purpose of me being passionate about, talking about these things. I hate the fact that we're being lied to, which is taking away our freedom of choice. And that's not fair, because as a human, I was promised free will. I was promised the freedom to choose, and I'm not getting the freedom to choose. I'm getting, the difference between two lies, the lesser of two evils. I don't like that. It's just, like voting. The Democrats and the Republicans, you're only being fed an illusion of choice. You don't actually have any choices. So, we have to wake up and realize that thing about religion. The mental oppression that comes from religion is absolutely detrimental to the human spirit. Religion leads on or insinuates that the power a person holds must be endowed upon them from an outside entity, or that without this outside entity, that the person has no power, or that they are worthless or not worthy of whatever gifts the universe has to bring. And I must say, we got to come up off of it. Got to come up off of that. Got to come up off that bullshit. Got to come up off the bullshit, okay? Because the Bible tells you, in addition to a lot of other things, it tells you, most of all, that God is within you, inside, not outside. So let's grasp the fact that our true power does not rely on anything other than us. I will say that the confessing with your mouth, and believing in your heart, also working with your hands, those are the things that actually create your salvation. But you have to believe in yourself. Okay? Believe in your own ability to do that. And then that's where your power, actually becomes real. So fear is another mental form of oppression. Again, the people who have created the construct of racism, the social conditioning that we're suffering through right now, a lot of the illusions that we face, they're all there to simulate or to feed us the energy of fear, which is a very low vibrational energy. And the more and more we are afraid of living our lives, afraid that we can't live without this corporation's government and rule over us, and government meaning mind control, we continue to subscribe to what the federal government is claiming to offer. Now, it's just like any other corporation that has a product, all right? What is going on right now is this corporation just happens to be in the business of fear. They sell fear. They literally sell fear to you. You're afraid that someone will judge you or think that you're poor. So you go out and you spend all your money on flashy items and cars and clothes. You're afraid that your child might get sick off of some debilitating disease. So you go and pay for bunches of medical care and medicines and toxins and what do you call those things? Vaccinations to, inject these things. We consume these things willingly. These are things that we're willingly consuming. The food that we eat, after we finish coping with all the things that we're afraid of, now we're comforting ourselves with food. There are so many contradictions that are fed to us through social conditioning that it just doesn't make any sense. We're overly sexualized. We have all of these things going on, but then we have religion that comes to teach us that this outside power is supposed to be controlling whether or not we live good or bad lives. And which is a reason why I believe we're living, overwhelmingly bad or dissatisfactory lives. Who's happy? Who's happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? Who's happy? You happy? I'm trying to be happy. And the last thing about oppression of the mind, I want to sort of highlight is our lack of identity. There are so many things that have stripped our identity from us, especially our miseducation. As a group of people, and I'm going to also add once again, our European colonizers, you have also been largely misled to believe things that are not true about history. Black people, first of all, don't exist. We're not black, you're not white. And also, melanated people did not all come here from Africa. So, I'm sure that you guys already know you sound super ignorant when you say go back, because, we were here long before you, and I'm pretty sure that it would make a lot of people happy if some of you would go back to wherever it was you came from, but especially those of you who are destructive and hateful. The videos are not making you guys look good, calling the police on kids and stuff. Are you angry? Why? What did we do? I just want to know. What did we do? We just came to slay. We just came to slay. That's all. So, let us live. You know what I'm saying? Let us live. Let us bounce the afros. Let us play the music loud. Let us swim. Let us sell water. Let us do what we do. Y'all love us anyway. Just stop fucking, sheesh. Anyway, let's just love each other is all I'm saying. Okay? So anyway, the lack of identity, not knowing where you come from, not knowing your history, not knowing your position in this political system that we all participate in, as voters, as legislators, as congressmen, as, representatives. Honestly, I want you people, all of us, everybody, think about what it means, the fact that we have a representative government. What is a representative government? Huh? A representative government means that you are supposed to be represented according to whatever it is that you want to see manifest in your society. If I'm voting for love, peace, and happiness, all I'm getting is hate, oppression, and war. Who are you representing? You're the worst lawyer in the world. You're the worst advocate I can find. Who are you advocating for, lawmakers? Who are you advocating for? None of us are happy with what you're doing. So if you're representing me, please sit down. If I'll represent myself. How about that? Let me do it. Let me do it. Give me them law books. Give me them law books because y'all tripping. All right? You are stripping away our identities by not allowing us to honestly be represented correctly. Excuse my little tongue fumble. I'm not editing this. I think that's pretty much it for that. Also, chemical and medical warfare is also causing a form of oppression in the mind and the body. So social oppression, I think, is something that we don't necessarily have to talk about too much. Lack of protection, being hated, propaganda, and entertainment is a form of social oppression that I believe definitely affects the melanated, or what we call a minority group, even worse than it does Europeans, because obviously we're the ones who are being attacked. Our image is heavily attacked from several different cultures that don't know or understand who we are. Specifically, blacks in America. We have a very unique position because we're ignorant as to who we are on a large scale. Most Asians can tell you exactly what type of Asian they are. Where do you come from? Are you Japanese? Are you, from Tokyo? Where are you from? Are you from China? They know. I'm Chinese. I'm Vietnamese. I'm from this place. I'm from that place. Us, I'm black. I don't know. I'm black. Also, forced bastardization, a form of social oppression. There is no other place on the face of this earth where an outside entity, such as a private corporation, also known as the federal government, can be so intimate in your home that they can force the man out of your home. Ladies, you letting the government force your man out your house. That's the government. When the government ever kept you warm at night? Ooh, girl, but anyway, we ain't gonna talk about that. Forced bastardization. Taking our men into prisons, taking our fathers out of homes, pushing homosexual agendas in our communities. Even though people are going to be people, they're going to do what they want to do. It would be nice if people were left up to their own devices and not necessarily influenced one way or the other. The influence is heavy on one side. The influence is heavy on one side. So I think that is something we have to think about. In consumerism and economic oppression, we largely suffer from predatory lending, things like higher interest rates, lower credit scores, whatever, economic. Honestly, that's throughout. I'm pretty sure we all know that we're not really known for having the best financial status in the world, even though we are responsible for supporting most of the funding of the country by our spending alone. Quite a few things we have to talk about here. We got to talk about quite a few things. The oppression is something that it's woven like a web. So if we